Welcome back to Capital today, and of course the hot topic once again is with regards to the GST and its implementation. Now on that note, we have two very special guests who's going to share with us a little bit more insights with regards to the importance of GST, consequences, ramifications as well. We have Mr. Yeap Kok Leong, the CEO and Managing Director of Tricor Malaysia, as well as Mr. Chia, Executive Director of GST Training and Corporate Advisory. Thank you, gentlemen, for being on our show today.
Thank you.
Now, as always, to start off the segment, we would like to find out a little bit more about Tricor Malaysia. But first, Mr. Yeap, can you just share us a bit about your background prior to Tricor?
I had my beginning brought up in a Big 8 accounting firm then. I was in Coopers & Lybrand at the age of 21.
Wow.
I stayed on with Coopers & Lybrand until when I was 39 years old.
Very loyal.
Yeah,
Wow.
19
almost
years.
Almost two decades.
19 years. I spent a good part of my professional life. Virtually, I said I'm brought up in a Coopers & Lybrand environment.
Right. And from there, how did Tricor come into the picture?
Then I came out to start my own practice, to do what I know best. Quite fortunate, within a time frame of 7 years together with my other partner, Pusian. I think in that industry of company secretarial and share registration, we rank ourselves easily number 5 after 7 years.
That's quite phenomenal growth in such a short period of time.
We are a bit fortunate. We are being supported by friends, and I think our sheer hard work and attitude also helps a lot. Then there is this opportunity for me to consider either to list the company under ACE with some business model in mind, and or an option to be one of the multinational. That means going back to where the big firm environment that I was brought up in, like Coopers & Lybrand. So we sold the practice. Of course, we still maintain control in the company, some form of shareholdings, through Tricor to become international player back again.
Right. And speaking of Tricor, it actually originated from Hong Kong?
Very interestingly, yes, it originated in Hong Kong, and it was one of the very forward-thinking bank, the Bank of East Asia, Hong Kong, largest local bank in Hong Kong, saw this a bit of opportunity. I mean, the owner, the CEO, President, Sir David Lee, was an ex-Coopers & Lybrand man himself, a chartered accountant. So he understands the business, and of course, he had given a free hand to some professional to run. And he started the company called Tricor, essentially mean 3 core businesses. The opportunity came about in Hong Kong when the Big 4 have the businesses which is conflicted, meaning to say after the Enron environment where they introduced the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, they are not supposed to do those conflicted business, and they have to divest. And Bank of East Asia, together with its partner Worldwide Group, took that opportunity and buy up those business, which is essentially company secretarial, share registration, accounting and payroll. That's how the 3 core businesses come about. And they started with the acquisition of Deloitte's Hong Kong, subsequently Ernst & Young Hong Kong, those businesses, and PwC. So they have the businesses of those conflicted businesses of these Big 4, 3 of the 4, and overnight they became very, very big. And then they start reaching out to mainland China and Southeast Asia.
Wow. Very, very, very interesting expansion plans, and not just in Malaysia, Singapore as well. Robin, what about yourself? What's your story?
My story is very simple. I've always been an accountant after graduation from schools. I started my platform in the auditing firm, where I was those days exposed to GST and also some of the financial work, such as accounting work, tax work, etc. So from there, by chance, I was approached by Mr. Hypp to join Tricor, and I'm very happy there. He has given me a lot of opportunities, as well as Malaysia is the right place for me to stay. I find Malaysia is a very good place to work with, and that's why I've decided to stay in Malaysia.
Right, fantastic. And you mentioned a very, very good word just now. You've been very accustomed to GST, the influence and all that. So, Malaysia finally announced GST in 2015. Long overdue?
Well, I think this is not a new news totally. Malaysia has initiated this idea since in the 80s, and it was brought out in the 90s, and then only very recently, I think they have announced in this budget 2014, where they announced that they are going to introduce GST in 1st April 2015. From now to the actual implementation is about 17 months. But for businesses, we have to get ready within 14 months, which effectively means you have to get ready by 31st December 2014. Yeah.
Do you think the 14 months is actually sufficient time for businesses to be ready?
It depends on the company complexities and structure. For a small company, you may have a lot of time. But for a large company, because when we look at about GST, it actually talks about a business transformation process. And I think sometimes business may need to realign their business process in compliance with GST. Then it takes a little bit of time, especially in the area of IT, the accounting system, the point of sale system, including small companies. They may need to customize to their own nature of business and at the same time in compliance with the GST. So one thing I found during my implementation with some large companies, I think there's a good advantage for companies implementing GST is to improvise their internal controls. In many times when we try to look into their processes, we also highlighted the weaknesses. So some company was very appreciative because that helps in their corporate governance as well.
Right. So with regards to this, what kind of role does Tricor play in terms of the implementation of GST? I assume it's very hands-on, very direct involvement.
Yeah.
Maybe I just quickly touch on this, Robin. That's where we see GST must be implemented in a few years ago. So thereupon I stumbled into this talent, Robin, and we clicked and we worked together. So we have this passion, wanting to see when GST is really implemented, we are ready to proceed to assist the client, and also Tricor would like to be in this service line. So we have prepared ourselves over a couple of years, and I think we are ready to help our clients. And Robin is quite a prolific speaker. I mean, he has been speaking in many seminars, and people know him in that sense.
Right. I think it also helps with Tricor's background and, of course, origins in countries where GST has been implemented for a considerable number of years. So you got the hands-on experience in terms of assisting and advising during this implementation. Huh?
Definitely.
Yes, that's right.
Yes, absolutely correct.
There's also a statement from the government saying that there's a 500K threshold, and which is going to affect about 78% of the businesses in Malaysia. What are they supposed to do?
You see, this is a threshold, 500,000, is to ascertain whether a company is required to register for GST. When we register for GST, we are considered as a GST registered person. And a registered person will help the government, the authority now currently in charge of GST is the customs, okay, to collect GST from the consumer, from their businesses. But at the same time, as a GST registered person, or I should say, GST has a very good feature whereby those GST registered person who incur GST on their purchases and expenses can at the same time claim back for this expense. So effectively, they only just pay the net amount collected from their income, sales to customers, to the customs, and not the total amount. So there's some unique features. Until now, there's about 160 countries implementing it. Yeah.
Right. Now, something very interesting, I think a lot of people would like to know but dare not ask.
Yeah.
You mentioned you have to register, GST registered. It's under customs.
Yes.
Now, on the flip side, the other entity is the Income Revenue Board, IRB.
IRB.
So, one is GST, another one is income tax.
Yes.
Do they speak to each other in terms of enforcement? You know, sometimes people are very cautious when it comes to regards to declarations. So, do the systems speak to each other?
I think at the moment, it's just like UK in the early days, whereby the VAT is separated from the income tax. So this is exactly what happens in Malaysia. IRB, to my knowledge, is actually looking after the income tax, personal as well as the corporate income tax, and other taxes as well. But for GST is a form of indirect taxes.
That's right.
So indirect taxes currently is not new. It's already managed by customs. So customs also will be taking over to manage the GST. And I have dealt with the authorities. I'm very impressed with their efficiency of doing work, especially they are now already geared up for the preparation of GST. Because sometimes we are fortunate to be involved in some discussion as to how to improve the system and gather feedbacks. So for customs to manage the GST, it's not new to them. They have the experience. And they also have their own intelligence and enforcement unit to manage the GST.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's right.
But
Yeah.
looking at the past policies that the Malaysian government has been trying to implement, like for example, minimum wage, do you actually foresee that this might be delayed because of, you know, all the things that people are talking about, the adversity?
The things and the adversities.
Yes.
You see, in every issues, they will have people who support and there will be people who will not support. GST is actually in Malaysia, it's not new. It's a replacement of sales and services tax. So it's just broadened the tax base. But one thing I'm very surprised that the government here is very concerned about the people, the rayaks. So a lot of goods, basic goods and services are either exempted or zero rated. So the impact of changing from the sales and services tax and GST may not be so obvious than in many countries. Like in Singapore, they are very minimum zero ratings and exemptions.
Right.
But here they are more than just like comparable with Australia, a lot of zero rating exemption because they concern for the people. They are worried that the new taxes will have adversity and
More burden on the-
Yeah.
So
Right, yeah,
they
yeah.
try to minimize the impact. That's why in this budget 2014, I'm surprised there are so much income tax changes and also BRIM,
Yeah.
you know, the 300
Yeah.
for the
The one-off, yeah.
the one-off for the lower income group. So they have also tried to buffer to minimize the impact. So I would not say that there's adversity, but I think as a whole, it may be good for the countries because this system is much more transparent than our current sales and services tax.
Right. I guess it's a perception
Yes,
because
the
something
perception.
new is being
Yeah.
introduced
That's
and
right.
it's new taxes, greater hardship, greater burden
Yes.
on the people.
Yes, that's right. True.
Right. Now, moving on with regards to that, now the businesses which will be affected, as you mentioned, different approaches from the
Yeah.
big corporates, multinationals as well
Yes.
to the
Small companies.
small companies.
Yeah.
Obviously, software is going to play a very big
Yes.
part with
Yes.
regards to this implementation.
Yes.
Can you just touch a bit on that in terms of what the small boys together with the big boys need to focus on with regards to investing in such softwares?
I think computerization or accounting system is very important factor when consider the implementation of GST. Tricor, we also have a new software at a very low cost to help the small companies to cope with the GST. And I think the government is also looking at that effect, whereby they are asking companies like ourselves to go to certify our software, so to ensure that this software is meant for small companies to use effectively without bearing more for the cost. For big companies, different. Earlier I mentioned, it's a whole transformation process because they have so much business process and activity within an organization, and then therefore some GST may have been impacted, like some business arrangement. You know, for example, manufacturing companies has a canteen. Currently, many canteens in Malaysia are free. But for GST, when it comes in, there's nothing free. Everything must be above business.
Right.
So in that case, they may need to do some restructuring and charging the canteen operator. You know, but of course, they have to make out a very win-win solution to account for GST. As I mentioned earlier, for big companies, this is a good opportunity for them to reform and to look into their business process. Any weakness, once and for all, we look into how to tighten their internal controls. Yeah, this is something that I found out when I do many consultation for large companies. So there are some good point at the end of the day, although they may spend some money, you know, which is a
Long-term
cost.
investment.
Long-term
Yeah.
investment, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Also, just to note that because you mentioned that what is the smaller companies, how do we actually change the perception? Because of the fact a lot of these small companies, SMEs especially,
Yes.
which is 80% of our
Yes.
market here, they don't even have a computer system. Maybe just the big boss has a laptop, and everyone else is still writing at hand. What are you doing to actually help them prepare
In fact, I've done more than 100 seminars of GST for a lot of professional bodies, associations. I think training to create awareness for them is very important. And I think I may not agree 80% all manual. There are a lot of people, you know.
I'm saying 80% is
SMEs, yeah.
But then maybe about 40% are
may not be so much. Nowadays, people are IT learners.
Yes.
I mean, when you talk about industry kampongs, they may still use some small system.
Yeah.
That's why Tricor came up with this new system at a very low cost to help the SME. But the SME themselves must also set up the mindset to get themselves ready.
Yeah, and
but
I
the task is not so difficult.
Yeah, and I think
large
SME
company.
now actually gets like a tax deduction.
Yes, not only tax deduction, the government has given 100 million on the training grant and 150 million for the purchase of software for SMEs, which work out they are looking at 150,000 companies. So effective, one company may get 1,000 subsidies, which is very impressive. Like in those days in Singapore, they don't even give subsidies for SMEs, you know, because this is actually part of business responsibilities to collect GST on behalf of the customs.
So in essence, the Malaysian government has been quite sensitive to the,
Not sensitive, just
to the
sensitive,
needs.
yeah, but proactive.
Very proactive.
Yeah, this budget is, I should say, is a very good budget, whereby they not just only think for the people, but they also look after the businesses.
Which is very crucial.
Yes.
Now, the percentage announced was 6%. What do you think of it? 6%, fair, could be better, should be lower?
6% now at the moment is still lowest in the ASEAN.
Yeah.
Singapore, 7%. And I think with the similar rate with the service tax, 6%, right?
Yeah.
And lower than the sales tax, I think it's still very reasonable. Because currently sales tax 10%. So when GST come in, there will be no more sales tax, no more service tax. They have only GST 6%.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
We're almost running out of time. Robin, what advice would you give to businesses out there to prepare themselves with regards to the implementation of GST?
Well, I think when the new tax system come in, we should learn how to understand it. Sometimes businesses may not want to support the idea and they just push one side.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's still the business's responsibility to comply with GST. So you don't comply now when things does not turn out well, you pay unnecessary penalties.
That's right.
Yeah, so for small companies, I would advise at least go for training. So Tricor will have a new GST conference on 22nd January just to promote. Maybe they can
Coming
come
soon,
for
2 months time.
They can claim HRD. I think they need to understand some GST concept. For large company, as I told you, is more than knowing GST, but how to realign their business process. So again, it takes time. As just now you mentioned, to align maybe IT system, it takes about a couple of months. It can be 6 months, but now 14 months now. It's important for business to get ready for preparation of GST now. Start early.
So very important, do not procrastinate, do not do it last minute,
Yes.
and do not hope that the Malaysian government will postpone
it again.
Fingers
Yeah.
crossed. Before we take a commercial break, Mr. Yeap, the future for Tricor, what do you envisage? What's the vision moving forward?
Tricor actually has its presence in Asia Pacific. I think we are already the biggest, and we are continuing setting the footprint. Our group CEO Johnny and Managing Director Julian, they have far foresight, and we are very supportive of their vision to be having office in all the major cities in Asia Pacific, which our latest edition 2 months ago was Seoul. We are now in 15 countries with 23 cities, and we are moving on with contact points in USA and Europe as well.
Wow, fantastic. Looks like the future is extremely bright for Tricor Global. All right, Mr. Yeap, Robin, thank you very much for your time today. It's been most informative. At least now we have a better understanding with regards to GST. And of course, education and awareness is key. And of course, don't wait till the last minute. And as usual, appeal to the government, please delay GST. It is much needed for the benefit and the long-term survival of Malaysia. We're going to take another quick commercial break right now. When we come back, we have our capital profile on one of the world's largest semiconductor makers here on Bursa Malaysia. So stay tuned.